Hi, I'm Michael, and this is my informative speech. Here's my audience. In 2012, from reported government statistics, there were 1,498 fires just in Colorado alone. That's a little over 4 fires a day. We live in the foothills here in Evergreen, and according to the Colorado State Forest Service, it is considered part of the wildland-urban interface, which is inherently at risk from a wildfire. In their guide on protecting your home from a wildfire, they state that it is not a matter of if you'll be affected by a wildfire, but when. All of us can be affected by fire, but especially those of us living out here in the foothills, where the danger of a roaring fire could be lurking on the other side of a mountain we live on at any time. My research took me from the Colorado State University's Colorado State Forest Service website to the National Interagency Fire Center, and finally to the Department of Homeland Security, and I'd like to share some of the information that I've learned. First, we'll go over how to prepare. Second, the maintenance that's required, and thirdly, what to do during and after a fire. Alright. So, to prepare, we start with the closest zone in our house, from 0 to 15 feet, up to 30 feet, depending on what's outside the house. If maybe there's trees or if there's a yard, you want to protect things in the yard, you need to extend the zone beyond that. The bigger the zone is, the higher the chance house has to survive. When working on it, we start at the base of the house and we move outwards, because that is the most important part of fire prevention, is keeping the house as far away from the fire as possible. This zone should have the least amount of bushes or trees or grass, preferably none if possible. If on a hill, this zone should be extended 5 or more feet downhill from the structure. There should definitely not be any trees. If there are any trees, they should be considered part of the structure and the zone should be extended. You don't want to keep firewood in this zone. And if there are grasses, such as wild grasses, at most 6 inches tall. The second zone, 30 to 100 feet away from the house, it just needs to be reduced. Trees and vegetation are okay, as you can see my stick figure trees. The trees should be clear of leaves and branches, at least about 10 feet from the ground. That's about me plus a few more feet. Clear under trees to reduce the possibility of a fire. Generally, fires on the ground, and the more debris, the more brushes and whatnot, increases the likelihood of the fire moving up to the crowns of the trees where all the branches are. And that's so you want to keep the ground as clear as possible. If you do have bushes or smaller trees, better diagram on this side. Here we go. So here's the first part. Here's me and the 4 feet to keep the 10 feet above the tree from the ground. And then say you have a 6 foot brush or tree, you want to keep at least 15 feet between the branches and the leaves of the trees. That's 2.5 times the height of the trees. And that goes for all brushes, anything like that, any kind of vegetation. And then zone 3 is beyond 100 feet. And basically that is all you're mostly concerned about is road access. So emergency crews can get in to save your house. For maintenance, we want to keep grasses and weeds mowed to a minimum or a maximum of 6 inches. We want to keep our roofs clear of pine needles and whatnot. Of course, we need to keep our shrubs and vegetation pruned. We have pine needles are very relevant here, and they can be very hazardous to start fires very easily. And any kind of debris we don't want to burn or anything or spread around the property because it's dry, and that could just bring more fire, so we want to dispose of that. Alright, and finally, what to do during and after a fire. You make sure you call 911 because you never know if someone else has reported it or not. Definitely evacuate immediately if told to do so. However, until told to do so, it is generally good to spray your property with water, spray the house with water. You can get garbage tubs, fill them with water. That will help reduce the fire getting towards your house. If you have sprinklers, strategically set them in places where they can constantly spray on the house if the water's still running. If unable to evacuate, then definitely stay inside. You don't want to be outside. It gets very hot. And so hopefully you don't get caught in a wildfire, because there's a 10-minute window of a wildfire's most dangerous part. And that's when the fire's moving through the land. It'll spend 10 minutes around your property blasting you with heat and other things, and it gets up to temperatures of thousands of degrees hot in those flames, and you just don't want to be outside. After a fire, definitely only return after it is deemed safe by authorities. After a fire, for several hours, it is possible the fire could re-spark up, so you want to watch out for hot spots or any kind of smoke. While you're in your house, make sure you're wearing a dust mask. Wet down the debris with water to avoid exposure to harmful dust or particles. Don't use water that may be contaminated for personal use, such as showering or brushing your teeth. And make sure you photograph any kind of damage for insurance, of course. So, we've talked about what to do during and after a fire now. So, we've concluded the speech pretty much. So, today we talked about how living in the wildland-urban interface can put us at an increased risk for fire damage. How there are 3 main zones of concern for fire reduction. They are 15 to 30 feet away, 30 to 100, and beyond. The first zone should be with very little vegetation, kept mostly clear. The second zone can have a couple of trees and shrubbery, but they need to be made sure that they're quite far away from each other. And the last just needs to make sure that you have good road access. Maintenance is important, as during a fire, the debris on the roof can catch fire very easily. If there is a fire, and as long as your house is prepared and you use enough water, generally your house will most likely survive. After the fire, make sure you return when it's deemed safe, and don't forget that the fire could start immediately at any time, and if you smell smoke, get it out of there immediately. I'd like to end with an addition to a popular quote from Smokey the Bear. Only you can prevent forest fires and keep your house safe from them. Be safe, and thank you for listening.
Yay!